Hello everybody, this is Josh Bycer from GameWisdom.com. Welcome to today's Critical Thought. We got some bad news, good news, and more bad news for today. Let's start with the first bit. Last night I managed to get my first play of the game in Overwatch. I mean first one ever playing the game in beta as well. What I'm taking that as is a sign of the apocalypse. So I'm pretty sure this is going to be our last week. I'm sorry I didn't intend on that happening. It would be like giving me a basketball and I make a 3-point shot, which would also be another sign of the end times. So if this really is our last week, I just want to say I'm sorry. I didn't intend on it happening, my bad. In a later story, we are at 678 subscribers here on YouTube after the little dip yesterday. Thank you so much for subscribing. I hope you're enjoying the content, and when we hit 700, I'll have a little special video ready. Now for the other bit of bad news. This is a topic that I've been wanting to talk about for a long time, and I was sort of debating with myself if I wanted to talk about this today or do a more lighter story. Still interesting, but not as soul-crushingly bad. But this is a topic and a statement that needs to be talked about. It actually needs to have been talked about probably 8 years ago. And it is a question that I hear a lot. Is making a great video game good enough? And I've lurked on many message boards, forums, Facebook groups, Reddit, and for those groups and such dedicated to indie developers, you will hear the same answer to that question. Yes. Just make a unique enough game, make something entirely original, and you will do fine. No, that is not it. And the alternate version of this video would be me just sitting here saying no for about 10 minutes. And it sounds like it should be right. Make a great game, make something entirely original, and you'll succeed. But one of the things I've learned after the last 4 years of doing game wisdom and talking to developers in all areas of the industry, that's not true. And as someone who has seen the forest for the trees, I can say why. And there's two major problems with that statement. The first one has to do with uniqueness. And this goes back to my piece I talked about with refinement versus uniqueness in games. In that post, I talked about the two extremes, whether having an entirely original game, something never before seen, or having something very refined, something that we've seen before but taken to an elevated state. And with these two extremes, we can basically break them down as indie versus AAA. As I said in that piece, when we talk about indie games, we usually see very unique titles, something that's never been before seen, but at the expense of refinement or polish. And then from the AAA side, they are very refined titles, but we've seen them before in some extent. And for a lot of indie developers, they feel that uniqueness is enough. The problem with that statement is that from a design perspective, it's going to show some major issues with your game, especially with marketing to other people. I don't care if your game is a unique, thought-provoking game that will make me question my belief systems, my religious values, make me see the world entirely differently, if I have to spend 5 hours trying to figure out what the hell is going on with your UI. And if I'm having that problem, what makes you think that the general consumer is going to be any better? And this is one of the first things that's about being a game designer, is you need to look beyond just yourself and your fans. Making a game for just you and your friends and family is not the same as making a game that you intend to sell and live off of. You need to look at the greater market. You need to understand how people have made games like this before and what have they done to make them accessible. And talking about accessibility, that is another critical thought right there easily. So I can't talk all about that now. But from a game design perspective, you need to make something that is appealing. More importantly, you need to make something that is marketable. And let me ask you this. If I put Call of Duty, Undertale, or Papers, Please in front of the mainstream market at a GameStop or a Target or even just on Steam, what game do you think is going to get instantly the most buzz? And I don't care that Undertale sold really well and is a great game. In terms of marketing, the answer is obvious. It's Call of Duty. And right there, I know that a few of you are going to be sneering at that statement and saying that Call of Duty is derivative. It's, the same thing we've seen over and over again. But it is a game that was designed to be marketable. Too often when it comes to indie development, as we've said, uniqueness comes at the price of accessibility. And we see this with so many indie titles. You can make a very great game, and I've played some amazing games. Even Renowned Explorers, being my 2015 Game of the Year, was an amazing game. But when it comes to marketing it, that was an entirely different story altogether. When I spoke with the guys at Abbey Games, they said how hard it was to get their game noticed. If it wasn't for Total Biscuit picking the game up and making a video, that game may not have done nowhere near as much as it should have. And more importantly, do as much to consider it profitable. And that is a major point. This is what makes me shake my head when I hear indie developers say that just making a game is good enough. Because if you follow them up with that and saying, so, did your games, turn a profit? Most of them will say no. They will say it got critical buzz, or, the people who played it like it, but are they living off of that game? 9 times out of 10, the answer is no. Again, there are exceptions, like Undertale, like Her Story, Five Nights at Freddy's. These are games that were entirely unique and managed to turn a profit, but they are exceptions to the rule. And that leads me to say this statement that I think this is going to be the hate mail driver. A few years ago, I asked developers when I was still learning before Game Wisdom, I asked them, what do you think it takes to be a game designer? And 9 out of 10 times they will say, just make a game. Just make video games and you can consider yourself a game designer. After doing Game Wisdom and talking to so many people, I can honestly say that's wrong. The real answer, and what my opinion is to call yourself a game designer, you need to make a game that turns a profit. You need to be able to establish yourself as a group or a studio that can make games that are earning enough back to keep you going. Until you do that, you are just a hobbyist. And I don't care if you've made 30 indie games right now. I don't care if you've made 100 games all on Flash or Congregate or have sold them on Steam. Until you have made a game that turns a profit, you are not a game developer in my eyes. And I know that is going to send some angry messages my way. And that takes me to the second part of why just making a great game is not enough. When we talk about this, or when developers say that, that is code for ignoring marketing, for ignoring PR. And this is something that I've spoken to so many developers about, and I've heard a lot of the same thing. Why should I spend time marketing my game when I need to spend time making my game? And it's a good point. And a lot of these indie groups, I hear the same settlement or same statement that they don't want to deal with YouTubers. They don't want, try and sell out. They don't want, essentially, quote unquote, do the dance. And that is perfectly reasonable. I've spoken to some developers off from recording and in private, and PR for video games for a lot of people is seen as you essentially being a clown. You're being the shill. You're the guy who says, try out my new game, it's hip and cool and edgy, and will make all the young folks like it and stuff like that. And people don't want to do that. They don't want to be that shill. They want to make a game, and it goes back to being an artist. Do you think an artist is going to be that person who's going to be on the street corner saying, buy my latest artwork, it's so amazing, you've never seen anything like it before? Of course not. But when I've spoken to developers, when I spoke with Z from Serenity Forge, we talked about this. Just as there is just as there is art when it comes to the business of the game industry, there is business when it comes to the art. And you need to understand how to market yourself if you want to succeed. For me, with Game Wisdom, this whole thing has not been me sitting for 12 hours a day playing video games and talking to myself. I've had to learn how to do marketing. I've learned how to do PR. I've reached out to people, and I'm still not doing enough. I have certainly grown. I mean, having 678 people or followers here on YouTube is definitely a testament to that. But there is still so much for me to do, just as there is more that you can do as a developer than just make your game. If you honestly think that you can work on your game and wait until 4 weeks before it comes out to start doing marketing, you are killing yourself. It's not, getting shot an arrow to the knee. This is taking a double-barreled shotgun to the knee of your game. Being successful in this industry requires more skills than just making a game. You have to understand marketing. You have to be that face of your studio or your game, especially if you are a 3-4 man or less studio. Someone has to do this. And if no one on your team is willing or able to do it, then you need to hire someone to do marketing. Again, in this world, making a great video game is not enough anymore. There is more to it than that. And more importantly, you have to understand this stuff if you want your game to sell. And I have seen many unique games just fall by the wayside for one reason or the other. But the important thing is, the games that succeed, the games that turn a profit, that allow you to keep going, these designers understand that there's both design/art and business when it comes to selling these games. The Darkest Dungeon being a good example again. That is an entirely original game. It's very unique and it's great. But they still spent a long time refining this idea, understanding the marketing, and building the buzz. You can't just show up one day with an amazing game and expect it to fulfill your wildest dreams and make you rich and you'll never have to work a day again in your life. And this is some harsh words to hear. If my post about game pricing and the ugly truth was bad, this is me basically canceling Christmas, I think, for a lot of people. But it has to be said. If you're a student or an enthusiast or a first-time developer watching this video, you have to understand more than just making a game. As I said, there's a difference between being a game designer and being a hobbyist. And the game designer is the person who understands the business and the marketing side of making a game, just as it is about understanding game design, understanding what it takes to make an appealing game, to make an accessible game. That is one of the core tenets of being able to be a game designer. And we are approaching 15 minutes, and there's just too much to talk about with this post. Or, I'm sorry, with this critical thought. So, we're going to wrap it up here. I hope that it wasn't too much of a downer. It is raining right now outside, so I guess it is appropriate to talk about this. So, if you enjoyed today's thought, be sure, of course, like and subscribe, share with your friends. And other than that, once again, I'm Josh Bycer from GameWisdom.com. Hope you enjoyed today's critical thought. I will talk to you all again tomorrow with my next one. Have a great day, and hopefully don't get... Thanks for watching the video, everybody. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment, of course, share with your friends. It always helps out. Check out Game-Wisdom.com, where I examine the art and science of games. You can follow me on Twitch and Twitter under GW Bycer for the latest updates of new content. And be sure to check out our Patreon campaign. You can find us on Patreon under Game Wisdom if you would like to donate and help contribute to keeping Game Wisdom going. Your donations can not only give us the monthly funding we need to keep supporting ourselves, but if we can hit some goals, it will mean more great content for you, and there are some nifty little rewards there as well. Thanks for watching this video, and be sure to tune into the next one real soon.